Yo, what's good? It's Andrew from ProducerSociety.com. Today I'm talking to you about the saxophone in GarageBand, how to use it, how to get it to sound good, and also where to find it. So right away I'm going to tell you that there's three main plugins that I found thus far that are free that you can use for the saxophone in GarageBand, because let's be real, we know that the regular VST instrument that it comes with is just not the best. So in terms of what you want to get, you can go to my article here and I have the links for it. I'll probably put the links to each plugin in the video description as well. But you got your DSK saxophone, your Iowa alto sax, and then your Iowa soprano sax. And you just download these into your DAW as you normally would with a piano, or excuse me, with a plugin. So if you don't know how to do that, I also have the link for how to install plugins in GarageBand. I have videos on how to do it as well. So let's move on to the main parameters of the saxophone. In this particular case, I use the DSK saxophone because much of the controls are the same, and it's also my favorite sax, so I just kind of went with it. So you have 7, right? You got your attack, decay, sustain, release, velocity curve, reverb, and then the level. So I'll tell you what the attack does. The attack, which you can see right here, by adjusting the attack, you change the speed at which the compressor latches onto this signal and compresses it. So I'm going to show you what that sounds like. So you got my sax set up right here. Let's turn the attack right off, and then we'll play a note. You'll notice that it starts playing at maximum volume pretty much right away. But when you crank it, you notice how it kind of like fades in a little bit? Well, that's essentially what the attack is doing. There's different reasons why you would set up the attack. As I wrote about in my article, I would say that if you're going to have a lot of attack, it would probably sound the best if you're playing notes in succession, like very fast. So if you have the attack, say, like up to here, I find it sounds the best like that. But anyway, I usually keep it about halfway. I find that sounds the best. Now, the decay, on the other hand, I haven't noticed a difference. I don't think it does anything. Maybe someone else can notice a difference. I don't know. So I usually just keep it right off. The sustain, on the other hand, the sustain's a bit different. It does make somewhat of a difference. And what it does is that, how did I explain it in my article? I had a good way of explaining it. So it controls the degree of sustain in proportion to how long you hold down the note on the MIDI keyboard. So what that means is that when you have the sustain cranked, it's going to continue playing the note at the same velocity and intensity and volume as long as you continue holding down the note. But if you turn it way off, I find that it dissipates a little more. However, the sustain and the decay, they seem to work in conjunction. I'm just kind of realizing that now. So if you have the decay and the sustain on, that's going to control the summary, or the sum total of the sustain, I guess. See, there we go. So yeah, I guess these two work in conjunction with each other, which is something that I literally just learned right now, because before I couldn't figure out what it was that it was doing, but that's what it does. So, by the way, I got a present for you. Go to ProducerSociety.com/free mixing cheat sheet. That'll put you on my list to get a free mixing cheat sheet. And I send all kinds of cool tips and stuff that I don't share anywhere else. You can also join my forum at forum.ProducerSociety.com. For now, it's totally free to sign up, but in the future, I'll probably lock it down and then turn it into a full course platform. And then you move on to your release. And what the release does is that it adjusts the degree at which the note fades after you've stopped pressing on the MIDI keyboard. So in other words, when you have this release cranked, let's see what it sounds like. You notice that I let my finger off the keyboard and it continues playing just by a little bit. But when you turn it way off, the difference is pretty noticeable. See, it just stops playing completely. It just stops completely. But then when you crank it, so I took my finger off the keyboard a little while ago and it just continues playing. So that's what these do. And then you have your velocity curve, right? Your normal velocity curve. So that's just the strength and volume of the note. So if you have it at weak, it's going to play the notes very weakly. But then when you put it at normal, that's more normal, of course. I would just keep it at normal, frankly. And then, of course, your reverb. Your reverb is pretty self-explanatory. That everyone knows what reverb is. But if you don't, that's just kind of like a control that controls the level of. It's kind of a difficult concept to explain, but I have a good way of explaining it here. It just controls it. It makes it so that the sound is coming from a distance away. So, for instance, when you increase the reverb, it sounds like it's making the distance even further. But when you turn it off, it's almost like the saxophone is completely right at the mic, and that's what that does. And then you have the level, and the level is just the output level on the total volume of the plugin, and that's what that does. You know, so I typically keep it around 3/4, maybe a little less. I wouldn't crank it because then you might run into some clipping issues. However, as you know, you can just control the volume on your VU meter right here. So in terms of what I would do to make it sound good, I use a few different plugins. I use the channel EQ, the compression, the reverb, and delay. All of these working together can get it to sound pretty good in context with other instruments. So you can see what that looks like here. You got this is my saxophone EQ, and I find that sounds pretty good. I'll show what it sounds like when it's turned off. So that's what I use, but also there's a ton of different saxophone presets. Like you got the soprano sax right here. And then you have, a tenor sax. And then there's another one, I believe, too. Sax section. So, it's up to you which one you want to use. And also there's different presets for different saxophones, obviously, as you can see now. In terms of the compression, I would probably I use the platinum analog tape for the compressor on this particular instrument, but then I put up the ratio to around 3, and then I put the attack to around 35 milliseconds. And that's mostly just controlling loud peaks and stuff. It's not really shaping the sound all that much. And then finally for the reverb, what I do is I go into the Space Designer reverb because I find that sounds pretty cool. The reverb Space Designer, you can see it right here. You click on it, and then you go into your presets, medium spaces, rooms, and there's actually a sax reverb right here, and that's the one I chose. So I also I usually drop down the output just a little bit because it's a little much. I find there's almost too much reverb. Around 20, I would say, maybe a little less, negative 19.5. That's how much reverb I would have on it. And then for the stereo delay, I just have it set at an eighth note on the left and an eighth note on the right, and then I have the right and left mixed to around 20%. And that's kind of the delay that I always use for instruments, except I typically have the left and right mix a bit smaller. But anyway, that's how I would mix the saxophone in context with other instruments. So that this is the main sax, all right? Now you also have your other saxophones, which I can show you right now. You got your Iowa alto sax. and it. So yeah, that's the Iowa one. It sounds it definitely sounds different. It sounds the best in the C3 range. When you go above or below that, it doesn't sound so good anymore. And then you also have the, which one is it? The soprano sax, I believe. This one's a little cooler just because you can adjust the amount of vibrato on it too. And then all the settings are the same on it like the other ones. But anyway, these are the Saxophone plugins. They're free, so obviously they're not as good as, say, something that you pay for. In my article, I did mention a few plugins that you can pay for that are awesome. Like this one from Audio Modeling is pretty awesome. It's $350 Canadian, which is quite a lot. But if you go on YouTube and you check out what this thing sounds like, it's like a legit saxophone. It sounds just like a real saxophone. And then you also have the session horn bundles that you can get from Native Instruments, and that's just a more general amount of plugins that you can get. And these are pretty dope too. It's more comprehensive. You get more sounds and more instruments. But ultimately, that's essentially it for the free saxophones for GarageBand. I would, as I have already mentioned, when you pay for them, they're a lot better, So at some point in time, I'm definitely going to get the better ones because the saxophone is a dope instrument, As you can see by by my little tutorial here, is that they're missing that highly compressed, fluttering sound that saxophones have. It almost kind of sounds like a fart, you know what I'm saying? Like it just sounds very highly compressed, and it literally flutters, as I already said. Like it has this sound to it that's a VST. It just doesn't imitate. However, with the paid ones, it does have that sound, which is great, But anyway, that's about it for this tutorial. Make sure you like and subscribe if you liked it. If you didn't like it, make sure you like and subscribe, and then I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.